Okay, I'm doing another lesson here in the New Testament is Fake series. This is September 14th, 2017. I want to show you again what I've said about Christianity spreading to our people, but we ran from it. So, in other words, we ran from this Messiah that was created by the Romans. So, Hebrews weren't taking this on. I'm going to show you some information about the Bantu people. As many have pointed out before, Bantu people are Negroes and they're of the children of Israel. But I'm looking here today at Africa. I want to talk about two places in Africa. In South Africa, as you might see on the screen here, if I'm holding my phone properly, and then Uganda as well. To read here from dacb.org, that's the website for the Dictionary of African Christian Biography. And this article is titled A History of Christianity in Uganda by Kevin Ward. Uganda and Christianity. Now they're saying Uganda in the 19th century. Christianity came late to Uganda compared with many other parts of Africa. Missionaries first arrived at the court of Kabaka Mutesa in 1877, almost a century after the missionary impetus from Europe had begun. So you see where that come from? From Europe, not from Israel. Because we were chased out by the Romans and we ran into Africa. So who was left then spreading the Messiah belief, knowledge of the Messiah? Who was left to spread the knowledge of the Messiah or the Son that died for Israelites? The Romans. So you're telling me the Roman Empire continued to spread through the Vatican and the British and so on, continued to spread through European nations the message of your Messiah, the Israelite Messiah, and continued to spread it by doing what he was doing, by reaching out to Israelites. Because you're going to see that they're going after Israelites, right? Why? Because they're trying to get Israelites doped up on this 2,000-year-old Mashiach instead of having them be doped up on the Torah. So when you talk about Paul going into these different lands and so on, of course they're going into the lands where the Israelites are. They're going for Gentiles, but they're going to the lands where Israelites are to get Jesus into the heart of the Israelites. That is the thing you need to understand. They aren't going there because these are Israelites being sent to bring Christ to Israelites. They're going there because these are Gentiles who are bringing Jesus to other Gentiles and to introduce him into the heart and life of the Israelite. And that should not happen. So this push to spread this 2,000-year-old Messiah is still continuing even in the 19th century, right? The missionaries are still going out, just like they did after they chased us out of Jerusalem, and they continue to spread and spread and spread. Yet within 25 years, Uganda had become one of the most successful mission fields in the whole of Africa. So they're hitting this place really hard. Then they go on to discuss, the reasons for this success. Any discussion of Christianity in Uganda, the creation of colonialism at the end of the 19th century, must begin with Buganda, the ancient independent kingdom of the northern shores of the lake, which the Baganda call Nalaba Ali, if I'm saying that properly, the home of the Bulabali gods, and which the British christened Victoria. So they're putting in their own names and so on over there. Now, as we know with the Bantu people, they look like a wandering kind of people that don't really seem to have their proper place to be, right? It just kind of seems like they've somehow lost their homeland, and they've said that themselves in little readings I've been doing. And so they kind of fit the kind of whole picture of some lost tribes or something like that. You see what I'm trying to say? And wherever they went, they settled down. They merged up with other tribes of people that were there and lived together and tried to build a kingdom and so on and build life together. Sometimes they just drove out those people because their presence was so overwhelming that they drove out the people that were there already and kind of took over the air. They were so overwhelming when they traveled and moved around in their migrations, right? And so they stayed together like that, but they kept moving, and so on. And so eventually Christianity and Islam would come after them. Now, let me jump down some more. This is a very long article. I'm looking for something that's marked. Okay, here it is. The Arrival or Christian Missionaries, 1877. Okay, I can't seem to find it right now, but what I was looking for was kind of saying, I wanted their wording, but it was basically just saying, just showing how Christianity went in to the land, right? Into Uganda, and the missionaries were actually sent, and so they went in there trying to convert the people, which they did, right? Like they had Islam as well too before, and there was war over the Catholic Church and the Protestants as well, and so they're fighting, and they still ended up converting some of the people, but the people did not at first want this Christian message. In other words, they didn't want anything to do with this Messiah religion. So what we're seeing is that as in the first century, Israelites ran from this Messiah, and here again they ran again, but it was just a case that they were overpowered now. Now look here, I'm going to come back to Uganda. Look here at this book, Welcome to South Africa. No, South Africa has, different groups of people there. That's not what I'm concerned about right now. The part here in page 26, dealing with their religion. Page 26, for the religion, it says, religion. Before the European settlers brought Christianity to South Africa in the 1600s, and remember that's around about the time when the King James 1611 King James Version will soon be published, right? So it's like there's just everything is just getting in place to just further magnify this New Testament stuff. Anyway, the native peoples had their own religions. And it's kind of funny. I always wondered when I was a child, all this talk about African religion, but there's no actually kind of specific names a lot of times, right? Like sometimes you'll have certain names, but most of it just like African religion. But when you get to these other world religions, it's just like Islam, just one straight name, or Christianity. It's telling you that when they talk about African religions, I'm getting the sense now, more and more, that it's because these people were in large part the Negroes that fled from their kingdom that went down. Like you get these Bantu peoples, like they were Israelites and the Shanti and so on, these different groups of people, right? And so they don't want to tell you what kind of religion because they never had religion. Israel did not have a religion. They were just a nation of people, and they had some laws that they followed with the Most High. And the nations trying to mimic all this stuff, made up religion and slapped a name on it. So you hear the general term African religion, African religions. It's because these are the children of Israel who got scattered all around, and they broke up their commandments into different kinds of activities under different names as time went on. All African religions believed in a supreme being and worshipped spirits with the power to affect people's daily lives. So you see, like with the worship spirits and so on, that could somehow mean like angels or ancestors and so on. In some cases, like when we talk about our forefathers, that kind of stuff, right? But this is how this is how you see this kind of stuff being talked about. Now, about 2/3 of the population, however, are Christians. And they go on talking about the Dutch Reformed Church and the Roman Catholics, Anglicans, and Methodists. So it's like they come in there now, right? But before that, they weren't into these kinds of religions, and certainly not into these Messiah belief. They didn't want that. They were living there all these hundreds of years on their own without any Messiah. They fled from the Romans, and here again, they're still there without this Messiah belief. So if the Hebrews were really believing in this Messiah, like their own brother, supposedly Peter, getting up preaching on the day of Pentecost, and somehow after time the Romans ran them out, well, when they ran, because the Romans wanted to take over this Jesus, which sounds kind of strange, why didn't they go on with their Messiah belief in these places in South Africa and Uganda and all over Niger, Congo, and everywhere else that they ran to eventually? Why didn't they? It's because it's all a lie. They didn't participate in no Day of Pentecost stuff and Peter preaching on the Day of Pentecost and so on. Israelites weren't doing that stuff. They just did not accept this Messiah because he was a man, and their commandment says do not worship any other gods, and certainly not a demigod, some man god kind of stuff, right? So now let's look at this other one now. This one is Welcome to Uganda. Welcome to Uganda. This is a country in East Africa. Talk about the land and so on. No, I don't want that. Let me just jump straight to the religious section. Okay, history. Again, Bantu speaking. Now, okay, some light is shining, so you might not see the picture properly. But Bantu speaking peoples arrived in what is now Uganda between 500 BC and AD 100 in the 1300s. And I wonder, that stuff I have to look up too, because if you look at around 500 BC, things were starting to get kind of downhill in Israel, right, according to Old Testament history. And they were getting ready to all be leaving the land and so on pretty soon, in 100 years or so, or whatever time it was. They formed kingdoms that later became the states of Bunyoro, Buganda, and Ankole. By the 1800s, Bunyoro had become the largest state, but Buganda later grew larger. Okay. In 1884, Mwanga became Kabaka of Buganda, and see the picture up here that's showing that this is one of the drawing ideas of what Kabaka's place must have looked like, right? So this is a Bantu king. He became Kabaka of Buganda. He was taken out of power in 1888 after trying to make missionaries. See that? After trying to make missionaries leave Buganda, the Protestants, Roman Catholics, and followers of Islam then fought for control. The Protestants and Catholics put Mwanga back in power in 1889, and the story goes on. So see what I'm saying right there? He was taken out of power after trying to make missionaries leave Buganda. Again, these Bantu people are still resisting. Every time you turn around, they are resisting. These people who you call Africans, they are resisting. These people who you say ran from the Romans and so on, or was displaced from their land, and they keep speaking of some ancient homeland that they had at once that they want to get back to. These people who are moving around like nomads, migrating for hundreds or a couple thousand years actually, can't hardly seem to find a resting place. Every time they settle down, somebody comes to try to disturb them. Here it is again now, the Roman Catholic system from the Roman government that you read of in your Bible, in the New Testament, came after them and sent missionaries in 1888. Right? And because this Bantu king was trying to drive out the missionaries because they did not want any teachings about Christus. No such teaching. They didn't want to associate with any New Testament stuff and to be talking about he died for your sins. They didn't want that. So again, you see now, these people keep pushing this Jesus religion, Jesus religion. That's why you see Jesus, Jesus, Jesus on this kind of stuff with all these African churches and so on. It's because missionaries were sent to force it upon the people. That's what happened. They were forcing it upon these people. They didn't want it. So if Israelites ran into Africa, you're seeing that what's happened is that over time they were forced to take it over. So these missionaries then grew out of the Roman Empire / the Vatican system and the Constantinian Messiah movement. That's where it grew out of. These missionaries grew out of all that. And they made it their lifetime business to track down these Hebrew people and make them take on Yeshua. Right? It's like they forced by government tactics to accept. They were forced by government tactics to accept their own Messiah from the kingdom of Judah, who they refused to accept back in the 1st century under the Romans, making the people of the Most High obey their God by forcing them to accept Jesus. So they go and chase the people all the way up into the 1800s and so on to force them to accept their own Messiah. Because if these Bantu people really are Israelites and they fled, and the other Africans who are really Israelites who fled there, why are the Romans still coming and sending missionaries later on to get these people to force these people to accept their Messiah? If you know that if Israel takes on its Messiah, then they're gonna be united and be delivered and get stronger and overpower you in the end. Why are you going to set up your army and spend lots of resources and so on and hundreds of years, 2,000 years, trying to track these Israelites that fled from the Roman Empire? Everywhere they go, you try to track them, trace them down and find them to make them accept their Messiah. Wouldn't you be happy that they are rejecting their Messiah? The only reason they're trying to get them to take on this Messiah is because he was not their Messiah. He was a Roman Messiah. And Israelites keep fleeing from this Messiah every chance they get. And only by force of armies and governments and so on, and political pressure, do they take on this Christ. That's the truth of it all. Because you're seeing history books here saying that they keep rejecting these missionaries. So can you imagine now, these Romans, now missionaries, telling these people, you must accept this Messiah so that you can be saved by the salvation the Most High provided you. Accept him so you can be restored and serve the Lord your God. That sounds kind of strange, right, if they would actually say it like that. But you know what, when you think of it, that's exactly what they're communicating. They're saying, you ran from us in 70 AD, and every time we found you, you keep running. Now you set up kingdom here, you can't run because where are you going to go? This is your home now. We're going to come after you at our expense and make you take on your Jesus. We're going to send missionaries to teach you about your Messiah, to make sure you know he is yours because you ran from him. We're going to sit you down and we're going to force you politically to take him on, or we're going to send no more missionaries, but we're going to send in guns and bombs and horses and so on, and force you to take him or you will die. That's what happened. Why our people took on Christianity and Islam as well too, but that's another story.